I intend to keep my oath and serve as president to all Nigerians. I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody.
In 2015, a retired general returned to power on a wave of hope. To many Nigerians, the late Muhammadu Buhari was more than a man. He was a promise to fight corruption, crush insecurity, and rebuild a broken nation. Approximately 10 years later today, his name sparks debate. For some, he was a failure. For others, a misunderstood reformer in a broken system. To many more, he remains a champion Democrat of impeccable discipline and honor. This is not a defense. It is a closer look. Buhari's return to power came after 3 failed attempts. In 2015, he made history, defeating an incumbent, promising to bring discipline, integrity, and transparency. A military man turned Democrat. Under Buhari, Nigeria saw the most ambitious infrastructure drive since independence. For example, the Lagos, Ibadan, and Abuja-Kaduna rail lines. The long-awaited second Niger bridge completed. Over 13,000 kilometers of roads across the federation, and indeed upgraded airports in Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. In a country where youth unemployment has soared, Buhari launched social intervention programs like N-Power, conditional cash transfers, and trader money, reaching millions. Buhari made anti-corruption his flagship promise. Over 1 trillion naira in stolen assets were reportedly recovered. Yet, critics argue that the fight was selective and institutional reforms lagged. Still, transparency initiatives like IPPIS and TSA plugged billions in leakages. Insecurity remains the deepest wound. Buhari inherited Boko Haram at its peak, with 14 local governments under the insurgent control. That changed, but new threats emerged. We've got the banditry, farmer herder clashes, separatist agitations, to name a few. Was he overwhelmed? Maybe, but did he fail completely? The answer is more complex. There is also the issue of foreign influence and/or meddling. Many experts believe that it is not in the interest of some very powerful global figures to see Nigeria develop and defeat its security problems. So for this, I got a chance to sit down, well, virtually, with a former Dutch diplomat, Professor Dirk-Jan Koch, who worked in some African countries, including Nigeria. I peppered him with hard-hitting questions, including about this meddling thing.
A lot of the African leaders like to blame Western leaders, but then I'm like, hey, everybody has a responsibility here, right? So yes, the problems in Iraq,
yeah,
we can blame America, but the problems in Nigeria, yeah, I think it's a bit more nuanced, yeah. But I think it's always important to, if things are not going in the right direction, it's too easy to only blame external factors. It's always two sides of a coin, and I think that's important, the nuance that I would like to bring.
Buhari governed through global storms. Oil price collapses, a pandemic, inflation, and global economic slowdowns. For an import-dependent economy like Nigeria's, these weren't just setbacks, they were tsunamis. Yes, inflation rose, poverty worsened, but were these all his doing? No Nigerian president escapes controversy. Buhari's rule left scars, but also progress. He wasn't the savior many expected, but he wasn't the villain many now claim. In some places, people were seen celebrating the demise of the former president. So given the fact that most of those involved in the celebrations are youths, we got in touch with one activist who is angry about this kind of repugnant attitude. Comrade Rabi'u Rabi'u, the first president of Arewa Students' Union in India, spoke to PAP on this issue.
Umar, it's very unfortunate for young men and women and even school children that celebrated President Muhammadu Buhari's death. In fact, I wasn't expecting that, but this only shows the level of lack of education, both Western and Islamic, that is ravaging the northern Nigeria.
History is still writing his story, but perhaps so should we, as some youths who are busy celebrating the death of their leader, family members of the deceased were and still are too overwhelmed to describe the enormity of what they are going through. Why can't we, at home, acknowledge that while others abroad have been sending in their sympathies? I recently have sat down with an international journalist, Martin Dennis, who had the chance to interview Buhari on Al Jazeera English 2 times, and she said this to me.
Well, I think, the passing of a former leader is always a matter of national importance. It's a moment not only to reflect upon the person, but it's a moment to reflect upon the progress of the country as a whole, I think. There will be those who are pro-Buhari, those who are anti-Buhari, because he had faults, but also he had some good points as well. So this is also a moment in which those assets, if you like, can be compared and contrasted. But most importantly, I would imagine for Nigerians, all Nigerians, this is a moment of deep reflection as to where the country is, where they would like it to go for the future.
As we are reflecting and indeed acknowledging what his family is going through, we got a chance to speak to Zara Buhari about the type of father he was, and we asked her to tell us something about him not known by many people.
One thing that I think people don't really know about Daddy is that he was a very, very good listener. He listened. Whenever you would come to him, he would make sure that he listens to everything that you say and would try his very best to understand your problems from your own perspective, not just the way that he would understand it, but from a holistic point of view.
This is a story of ambition, struggle, and the reality that power is limited in a fragile democracy. In the end, history is never written in the heat of the moment. It's written in hindsight, with time, context, and perspective. The late President Muhammadu Buhari may not have delivered on every promise, but has also clearly delivered on many more. His leadership faced immense pressure, fierce criticism, and real limitations. But the full weight of the legacy, both the visible and the misunderstood, will only be known years after his passing. History will judge you more fairly than the moment ever could.